everyone, welcome to Contact Lost, the Polish podcast about competitive Warhammer 40k, both in Poland and abroad. I am your host, Tweak, and this is yet another episode of the WTC Tales or WTC Summary. And with me today, as you can see, I have the captain of the Polish national team, Typhus. Welcome, dude.
Hello. I finally have some time to actually paint models, which I love.
That's me to thank for that, because I'm interviewing you and I see that you can divide your attention to two things. I cannot do that.
Hopefully.
Yeah,
we'll learn that.
You can show us the mini at the very end to see how it goes. So listen, guys. As I said, this is yet another part of the World Team Championship Summary series, where I invite people who played at the WTC, who participated in the event, so that you know what the event was like, so that you know whether it's worth to go yourself. And my guest today, if you don't know who that is, Typhus has been playing a pivotal role in the Polish national team for many years. He's been in the selective committee that chooses the players for the national team. He has been responsible for the pairings or the estimations that our team does. And this year, he has not only been the captain, but he has been the playing captain, just because there were some issues that we're going to talk about in a moment. So, Typhus, is there anything else that I forgot to mention? Like, how many times have you been to the ETC or now WTC?
Depends. I was once as a coach for mercenaries back in 2012, and since then I was at most of them. Some of them I couldn't attend because of work commitment, but I've been involved in pretty much all of them. Even if I didn't go, I would help our captains doing pairings or help with the team comp, even if I wouldn't come either as a ref or a player. Including this year, it was my 6th time on podium, so I've been there quite a lot, just not on the fucking first spot, which is annoying. Like,
you'll get there eventually.
I hope so.
Yeah, but you, I mean, I guess by now our listeners can tell that your devotion and dedication to the national team is huge. Your hunger and appetite for the top spot is great. Would I be mistaken if I said that this year's involvement was your greatest involvement in the national team so far?
Oh boy, yes. I mean,
okay.
It was so much work throughout all the time, because when you need to account for the fact that we had so many fresh faces coming in, I didn't only have to work as a captain in like the regular sense, but I also had to make sure that people get familiar with the whole format, etc. So those years where we essentially during COVID, when we were doing the selection, all those 8v8 screams, etc., there was a lot of work coming through for basically 2 years before this event. Like, I'm not joking, it was like 2 years of preparation.
All right. So yeah, to tell our listeners what those preparations looked like, because 2 years, it's really difficult to picture that. It sounds just like a statistic. So what went into those 2 years?
Obviously, for those 2 years, we didn't only prepare for this year's event, right? Like,
right.
That would be pointless. But what was the thing? We thought that previous events would happen, notably in 2021, but they obviously didn't. So we are just playing a lot of TTS screams. So what was happening? I think we played over 20. So if I recall correctly, it was like 28 8v8 games that we played, where we basically gave a chance to newer faces in our community to make them familiar with the whole system, with how it works, but also to give the necessary reps to the players that we thought could make it into the team. So it was a way of making sure that because of this, people will be familiar with like the whole process, that you need to be selfless, that there will be no egos. So everybody that played singles mostly before would get familiar with the whole team part of the competition, because it's a completely different thing. Like, yeah, there's so much more in it that I can't even put it into words. So what we are trying to do is to make sure that newer players get familiar, and also what I think was also important is that we played against some better teams around the world in those TTS games. So some people who might have not been confident of their own skills, etc., could feel a little bit validated, which helps coming into the main event itself, because you know you are the shit when it comes to the competitive gaming.
Well, yeah. First of all, you got chosen for the national team based on your previous results, and then also in those TTS games, you actually showed that you have the skills. That yes, it validates you as a team member. So yeah, I completely get that.
So I think that's something that will be a thing that will happen every year now, from now, when it comes to the team selection process, etc. Like, the whole TTS thing gives you so much knowledge and so much experience, even though it's not onboard experience, it's a little bit detached from what you actually feel when you're playing the game. But it eases it on you when it comes to like the main competition. So not only that, and it also, what I think was the most important thing, we had few faces that nobody knew in the Polish community because they never played single events. So, for example, Gito, like, you would never hear about it because he played a mediocre army for most time. He would never get a good scores. But because we had TTS, he could play against me, Vladi, or Duda, and we made sure that all those prospective players that we found would play as much as possible into our top players to kind of validate them for ourselves as well, but also to make them more confident when it would come to the main event. So they would know that I can beat Vladi, I can beat Typhus, I can beat Duda. Sigler is no one then. Like, but
yes,
obviously I'm throwing shade. I'm always throwing shade. But what I mean by that is that you will not be scared when you're facing celebrities that you might have seen online, because you know that you've played against people that beaten most of those celebrities before. So it's a transactive property, right?
Yeah, it's a fair point. So I had a question about something else, but I think it's the right place to somehow weave it in. You've played so many TTS games. Does that help with the constantly changing meta? I wanted to change. So I wanted to ask whether whether you approve or disapprove of the fact that of what GW is doing to the game with those data slates released on a quarterly basis. I imagine that for a captain of a team who is trying to select not only the team members but also the armies that are going to play, such frequent changes make it extremely difficult to actually pick.
Yes.
So does TTS and do those training games somehow help with that?
Yeah, obviously. Like, because what I think is the most important in all of that is that whenever you see, for example, let's say Gito playing against Vladi, I'm not the only one watching. Everybody from the national team would hop into that game and just watch how they play. So the knowledge sharing is so much easier, and you are not only limited to insights from like blog posts or what somebody has written, but you can actually get your own insights from watching those games and realize that certain mechanics, like the new CP mechanic or the new secondaries, etc., have greater impact that you initially expected. So, and you can do that while not playing, like just watching. Like that was the thing with me when I was a non-playing captain. I would just watch other games and assess from that what are the impacts on the metagame by just watching. Because when you have enough experience, you can kind of see all those patterns emerging once again. Because the game is, even though the rules change, the game is kind of similar anyway. So all the it's kind of like in chess. You've seen all those 3x3 blocks, so you know all the possible combinations, and instantly something in your brain just reminds you that there was something like that, let's say in 2014 at WTC, back then ETC. So you can go back to those memories and actually use that knowledge.
Okay. So, yeah, I still wanted to hear, do you agree with GW's philosophy of releasing an update every 3 months plus chapter approved and so on? Or because that's actually designed for competitive players. That's not designed for whoever is playing with their friend in the basement and doesn't care about the competitive meta very much. But the point changes, the adjustments, the CP adjustments, by design, they are dedicated to you, competitive players. But is this something that makes your life easier or harder at the end of the day?
Okay, as a captain, obviously it's the worst. Like, you prepare and then like it was the case with Nephilim this year, that all your preparation will probably be scrapped. And we had a plan that basically when we knew at what date the Nephilim would drop, we agreed that we will not test too much before to not burn out, and then go on a 5th gear and just play this as much as we can. Like that's when I was in US as well. So everybody was playtesting and everybody was writing reports, and that as a captain I obviously do not like, but as a player I way more preferred this solution than what was, for example, a solution in 8th, when you would have those Psychic Awakening, all those new books, and keeping up with the new books, which only balance like 1 army, 2 armies, like sometimes 3 armies. I didn't like that as much. I like the meta being scrapped from altogether and new fractions emerging, victories, etc. I think it's a better solution. But as a competitive player, it's worse. It's even worse if you're a singles player, because if you do not own every army and you're playing only singles, you're just fucked at times. Because you simply do not have an army that you could actually field and be competitive. In teams, it's not as bad, because if you're playing worse army, you can still be in the team. So in that sense, it's cool for the competitive play, but I can imagine those players who do not own every army in their cabinet, like people like guys at Art of War or Money from Glasshammer, they cannot just meta hop to new flavor of the month. They do not have this available. So in that sense, I think it skews singles as well, but at the same time, if they've done no balance changes, we, for example, would still be fighting against those AdMech flyers, and we all knew how fun and interactive that one was. So
exactly,
I think it's a better solution. I like it. I think it's what this game kind of needed. Although I still hold to my opinion that this edition just needs to get scrapped, because the power creep is obnoxious. Like,
yeah, that's something that you've made clear on the previous episodes of Contact Plus as well. But I think this is a sentiment that is now being shared by more and more players.
And it's even more fortified in my brain after this year's event. Like, I had to play Drukhari, which used to be that shit when it comes to damage dealing, and I felt like a wet noodle at times.
Yeah,
which isn't the best feeling, man.
Yeah, I can imagine. So let's actually get to that. I mean, I have so many questions. I'm just going to probably connect some questions with others to make it.
I guess it will be just a trail of thought. And
yeah, probably. But yeah, let's do it like that. So first of all, the choice of armies. to what extent was it affected by Nephilim? To what extent was it affected by the setbacks that you had to go through? And to what extent was it just affected by people playing the shit out of their armies, and you knew that you can count on them? Because go on.
I can already answer all of that. It's a complicated answer as well, because with all those new changes before Nephilim, I wanted to have a clear 8-man team already, an assessment of strength of the armies at that point. So when those changes drop, we can easily reassess top armies and kind of make, I made like maybe not a graph, but a ranking of those armies again, and realize which went up, which went down, by how much, and whether certain armies are even worth looking at, according to this graph. So our preparation pre-Nephilim wasn't scrapped fully. But what we knew when I assessed those changes is that, for example, DevGuard is way better than it used to be, or I think that AdMech changes would make it viable in the right hands again, which was proven by Ziegler again. But we simply didn't have manpower for all of that. And that was a thing that plagued us throughout this year, with multiple people dropping from not only the team, but like team selection, that we had to be quick on our toes and just change our approach whenever something happened. So the changes were surprising, and we had basically, I told the guys that, okay, here's my take. What are the top armies? I gave like 2-3 days of analyzing the meta before I gave my input. And I told them that according to my information, those armies will be the best. Now we need to tailor them. And then it was a lot of work, because we had basically 5 armies pre-decided, because those armies from before the balance change were already good. So those were like Necrons. Maybe not, they weren't good before the changes, but come on. But we had like Necrons. We knew we weren't sold on Sisters. We weren't sold on Needs, but we knew we wanted Harleys. We knew we wanted Chaos Knights. And now is the worst time when you need to count up all those 8 players and you always forget some. But we had few armies that were set, and then I had few armies that I wasn't so convinced about, which were Sisters, Needs, Imperial Knights, and Blood Angels. And what we've done throughout those team selection and army selection was basically finding out counters for what we expected to be the most important army, most common armies that would be taken by other teams. So say we expected Harleys to be taken by more teams, which we were surprised that more people took Craftworks, which I think was simply an inferior choice. But
a common choice in the Western world specifically.
I guess, well, we were second, not first, so I guess somebody was right. But I genuinely think that Harleys were just a superior choice because of how they work in pairings. And we knew that we needed counters for Harleys, so we were looking for counters for Harleys. We knew that we needed counters for Craft Worlds, so we already took Harley as a list that will do that. We also chosen Chaos Knights to counter Craft Worlds, because Duda told us, I will counter Craft Worlds with my Chaos Knights, don't worry. And we were like, you play Craft Worlds?
He knows what he's talking about.
And he proven that, but not beating by much, but still winning those matches. So we already had that one covered. And we went through all those top armies that we expected. So like Blood Angels, Drukhari, Tau, etc. And we made our army choices based on our playtesting and estimations what armies will be taken and what we think from our playtests will be counter to those armies. So in case Harleys were a direct counter to any Space Marine list, any craftworks, and any cow list. Our knights were made specifically to kill all kinds of elves. I still cannot fathom why people take that big knight in Renegade Knights. I share Pumbaa's sentiment. That's like one of the worst models in the game. What the hell? Like, I know you might have something to prove that you take the biggest gun in your army, but come on, man.
Yeah,
take something that's actually viable.
I've listened to Joker interviewing Pumbaa, and he completely butchered the idea of taking the Desecrator with you.
No, that model is just awful. But anyway, so our approach was to identify counters to specific armies, and then have a team comp prepared in a way that whenever someone would defend with those armies in the pairing process, they would get fucked. So this way, in our pairing process, there were no safe defenders, at least according to our estimations. So no matter what opposing team defended with, they would get countered. And that was covered by 7 out of 8 armies in our team. And the 8th army was the one that I was playing, which was just made to be a punching bag, which was Drukhari. That was an army that probably, if we had more time, we maybe wouldn't have taken. But just because Crazy, who was supposed to play the army, only played Drukhari, we didn't feel like pushing him onto anything new. He knew that army well, and I still knew that this army can easily cockblock other high-hitting armies if it chooses a table. So, and choosing a table was another thing that was important for us in the team comp, as we played so much on those WTC terrain, that we knew how many of specific terrains are needed for certain matchups. How can you handle specific matchups with a terrain and how much the terrain impacts it? That we knew that we wanted our defenders to basically take away all the heavier tables. So in the later pairings, we would leave our knights and lists like shooting Necrons or Cow to be playing on the lighter tables, which they want to play on. So there was even a choice in armies to make sure that armies we take do not fight for the same table choices. And
so that there is no overlap between them.
Yes. So there was a lot of in-depth thinking and decision making regarding those. So yeah, I don't know what was the initial question. I was just going with a flow.
Yeah, that was great. So I guess, when we spoke in the past, or when we spoke in the past, many a time you said that you basically hate singles now, and that you mainly go for the team events because of the complexity of the higher level of thinking that is necessary, higher level of planning, estimating, and so on. So after what you said now, I completely understand what you mean. It's like something that you don't get in singles almost at all, or on a very limited.
And you can also bring armies that you wouldn't ever bring to singles because they simply lose against everything in the game, like was the case with our Drukhari. But they still have a role, even though they will not score points. And that's not something you ever bring to singles. And even like in WTC format singles, people like Gito previously, when he was playing a cog block version of Necrons, he would never get noticed, even though he would get like those 9-10 points against Drukhari because he would be middle of the pack.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
There's so much more to teams. And there's also a thing that I love in the team is that even if something is going wrong in singles, you can be like, yeah, whatever, I don't care, it's only me. But in teams, you are so cutthroat. You scrap every single point you can. You fight till the very end, and it also sometimes makes you play completely differently that you would play in singles, which I love. That you can choose a completely different approach. And like was one of my games when I played against France, I knew I could win that matchup, but at the same time, I knew I do not need to win this, and I need to not lose it. So I played accordingly. And those are the things that you need to identify when you get that matchup, so you can play the game like that from the very get-go. So yeah.
Okay. So before we get to like the nitty-gritty of the tournament itself, the Polish team suffered some setbacks before actually going to the event. Well, first one pretty early on, but still already after the announcement of the squad, Vlad was taken out of the squad because of work. So you needed to find a player who probably would pilot the Tyranids should you take them. Was that a great setback, or did it happen early enough for you to mitigate it?
With the fact that we didn't have that many players willing to go anyway, it was obviously a setback. But thankfully, Michu and Lesiu thought whether they can go, and we could handle that. But it's always a setback because you have something in mind. I had armies pre-planned in mind, and that was one of those setbacks that I needed to scrap that idea, because I knew that, for example, Lesiu is rather slow player, so I needed to shuffle the army so he will play something that he will not clock out. And that's already a thing that we need to consider.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a hit. Like, we had a good team, but Vladi is Vladi, right?
Yeah. No, Vladi, and if you don't know Vladi, you need to listen to our other podcasts, because
he loves talking.
He leaves a mark
as well.
Yeah, and it's hard to stop him. But again, most of the time he's right. So, all right, and then the second big setback was Crazy, obviously, who was supposed to go but got struck down by COVID, and then you, who were supposed to be a non-playing captain, decided to step in and play the army. Was that, from the time perspective, was that the right decision, or perhaps would it be better to bring in another Drukhari player, or was it too late at that stage to do that and you just had to?
We learned that day before leaving.
Oh, okay, so there was no room for changes.
We learned that literally on Wednesday, and we learned that on like Wednesday 12 p.m. I think, and
Crazy.
we were leaving like 8 a.m. next day.
All right. So was that? I mean, of course, that was a setback and unexpected one, which makes it worse. But then you had some experience playing Drukhari, right? So it wasn't like the army was completely strange to you.
If any player were to drop out, it was the best thing that was Crazy for two reasons. He wasn't a player who was supposed to get high wins, for which you probably need to know the matchups and have more experience. And also the fact that I've played the army like half year earlier kind of translated, because I knew most of the tricks. Like, I had to remind myself, and I kudos to Crazy, which written down me like few pages of tips and tricks that he used throughout all his tests. So I would just have to go through them. Before each game, I would just go through them to remind myself what I can do. But yeah, me knowing the army was certainly helpful. If it was somebody else who would drop, like say Duda, where he played very unconventional list that I didn't know how it exactly worked, it wouldn't work as well, because I couldn't
would have
play.
Been much more difficult.
Yeah, and for me it was more of a plug and play. Obviously, whenever people talked about it, other captains, I would pretend I know shit about this army, so they would feel more confident that I'm taking over that list. Which
the mind games never end, don't do they?
Yeah. I remember actually talking with my friend who was working at the bar at the event, Mikey. He went out one night with, I think, US and Australians, and they had a conversation that I'm supposed to be playing, and supposedly one of the Americans said that, holy shit, if Typhus wasn't in the team, how good is the team? How good is the Polish team this year? And it felt nice.
Yeah, I bet. That's so cool. But I'm going to stick to this idea of mind games going on, because you've been extremely secretive about anything that pertains to the national team. You haven't really published any lists, even when people from the national team were participating in events. The lists were not published; they were kept secret. The people like didn't talk about their lists and what they were taking in podcasts, including Contact Lost and so on. So, do you think that that strategy paid off, and this contributed to you taking the second place? That you pretty much knew what others would be bringing, but they never knew what you would bring.
I mean, well, 3 times they decided that Harleys are a good pairing for Craftwood, so I don't know what else I can say.
So, do you think you would have done as well without those mind games? That
To be fair, you never know.
Hmm.
Like I can only estimate, but I don't know how many international teams actually listen to this podcast. I although had few cool interactions that when we were playing against Aussies and me and Pumba were pairing, their captain asked us whether we are on that podcast because he recognized our voices, and he asked us whether we were one of those guys who said that US team lists are shit, and we were like, yeah, because obviously they are. We just won with them, and those are
instantly connected.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, there was some connection.
That's cool. That's cool to hear.
But I cannot put a value on us being secretive. I don't think.
And how about you having the insights that you have from the refereeing that you do? And to those who might not know, Typhus and Pumba, so our 2 most recent guests, serve as referees at major UK events. So you are definitely familiar with the UK meta, with the UK players, with their sort of way of thinking. And again, do you think that helped in any way? Or are we talking about singles events, so it doesn't help that much?
We it kinda didn't matter because we never played England. So like all the things that we've learned didn't matter, but we obviously had some information like which players are weaker on their team. I won't say names because I think that's overly mean in my case. But we had some like additional plans when it came to pairing, like which players we can exploit even more when it came to like individual skill. Obviously, Alex Harrison, he's dog shit, but that I need to put out there.
I think he knows your opinion anyway.
Yes.
Right.
But yeah, we are actually surprised that England didn't go, like the whole event didn't go too well for them because we had kind of similar team composition. But I guess they didn't have the amount of reps that we had.
I remember. Sorry, I remember when you said before the event that they are like one of the top contenders and probably the team that you're afraid of the most.
Yeah, and I think that was true. Like I think they tested the most into them because when you're a reigning champion, everyone is aiming for you.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
And this
you have a huge target on your back.
And we, for example, couldn't play test too much into, say, US lists because we do not have any Custodes and AdMech players in Poland. Well, I mean, when I say that, I mean on like national level. So we could, for example, play some games against them. Thank you for Cranmer for playing with us. But you play against them, but you do not play against Richard Sigler, right? So you can also get wrong perception on the matchup from those games. So we chose consciously to not play to certain teams and armies because we knew we didn't have time. And we needed to focus on the most common archetypes throughout our playtesting portion.
Yeah, so that's also something that Pumba said in the previous episode, that, for example, Australian lists were just so unorthodox and out of the box that it made no sense to specifically prepare for them, just because, one, you might not meet them at the event, and two, if they are so unorthodox, then there is a high probability that maybe they are just simply not that good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
which they clearly weren't.
That's a wrong call, but now we know. Hello, Captain Hindsight.
Yeah, but
anyway.
in hindsight, I don't think we could have playtested even more, man. Like, you do not know how much work the team actually put in. Like, you never know unless you are in the team and you realize how many hours were put in. Like, my son literally took days off to prepare. He took days off from his work. Pumba was literally playing nearly every day. He played over 50 games in the span of those 1 month since, no, maybe like 1.5 months since the film came out. We had Gito who told his girlfriend that, I'm sorry, my dear, there are higher responsibilities right now on me. We're not spending time together. So there's
for the greater good.
Yes, and it was actually a thing within our team, but everybody put a lot of work. Some people less, some people more. It obviously depends how much time you can actually spend on it. But myself, I've counted this. I've done over 120 test pairings since the list drop and then the event, which is a lot. When you account that every one of them takes about 20-30 minutes.
And also taking into account that you needed to travel to the United States for work and do this in a hotel in a completely different time zone.
No, I mean, I do not mean before list submission. I mean after list submission. Before list submission is a different topic.
So that's an additional amount of...
Yes.
God knows how much. Okay.
So it was... I hope nobody from my work listens to this, but I was sacrificing a bit of work as well. So it's a lot of commitment, especially in Poland, because we know that in some sense our whole community works in a way to allow us to succeed at the event. So you feel that, maybe players didn't feel that, but I felt a little bit of that additional pressure, knowing that people play win, draw, lose all around the world, and we play 20-0 system. We have a lot of team tournaments instead of singles. Those maybe for international or like teams from other countries, you do not feel that, but when you have a rather small community, I would say, because we have regularly, we have like maybe 50 faces coming to more than 3 big events yearly.
Something like that.
Then all those people basically sacrifice their year of play to make sure that our team will be the best they can be. And I appreciate that a lot. But whenever our players might not have felt that pressure, but I knew that pressure, that for me, it wasn't like only my work to succeed at this event. It was also work of other players, those who weren't chosen to the team, those who played on those international scrims, and also those who just watched our games and also helped us before the event by choosing to play the system that relies solely on this one event.
Yeah, there's a ton of unsung heroes behind that second place at the WTC, and that needs to be shouted out. Not to everyone by name, but you know who you are, I guess. So kudos to you for helping, because you contributed.
Yeah, so for me there was a lot more pressure. I think this was the WTC that I felt the most pressure attending in my whole career, because I knew how much work and hard everybody put, and having like the comparison of previous events, I knew it was more work than it was ever previously. and it still
so that's
wasn't
what
enough.
that's what I meant at the very beginning. That's what I meant with one of my first questions. Like, was this the the most absorbing event that you were involved
still
in?
wasn't. That's the worst part.
So tell me about, because I want to I'm conscious of your time. So tell me about.
As you can see, I'm clearly working, so don't worry.
Yeah, working hard or hardly working. Anyway, so tell me, when the lists got published, and you knew who and what you'd be facing, how did the estimations go then? Did you estimate for every single team that at the event and every single list, and think of every single possible pairing? I'm not saying, playing that game to test it out, but at least estimation. Did you have something ready for every team and every configuration, or
Not
just for the main
every
one?
team. Like, let's be serious. We didn't have that much time.
Yeah.
But we had. I've done pairings for like against. What was it? Let's say 15 teams.
Out of 28.
Yeah, and we had estimations for like 20. What I went through is basically the teams that we had in our pod, and teams that I expected we can meet at some point, assuming that we do well in our pod. And if we do badly in our pod, it doesn't matter anymore. We're screwed anyway. So yeah, we put a lot of work into that. I basically what we went through is identifying the most common list archetypes.
Right.
And you could translate estimations from one to another.
Pretty much.
And when we realized what's the most common, we told players that every single one of you needs to play against Bloody Rose Sisters, so you know how it works. Or you need to play against Catan Necrons, because so many teams chosen Catans for some fucking reason, which I still don't understand. So
or Tau with bombers or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, Tau with bombers everybody already played, because I made a call that this will be in nearly everything that will be good, and you need to. So that one was play tested before.
And probably Tyranids with Leviathan as well. It would
but needs were different than what we expected. There were different lists, but in all fairness, they were in the breath of fresh air again, except maybe German list.
Agreed. Yeah, that was something unseen.
Yeah.
All right. So from the teams that you've played, did you have estimations for all of it? All of them?
Yes.
And
pairings for all of them beforehand.
All right.
Every single one.
So before we went live with this, you said that your games, and talking about your games, probably won't be that breathtaking and so on. But yeah, let's leave that, because we all know how the games went. We know the scores. Anyone could go to BCP and check that. I'm more interested, and I guess that could be interesting for our listeners as well, because you are considered the mastermind of pairings. You're considered mastermind of Vista. Well, you are.
Not anymore.
You are still, and by many. And I would have difficulties finding players who know the game that well, the pairings that well, and who can do that well. So tell us about this. Tell us about how it went at the event, in all the team matchups. Did you get the pairings, the matchups that you intended, or do you think that, I don't know, somebody might have fooled you or tricked you, and you got pulled into a pairing that wasn't so favorable for you?
No. Actually, first of all, it wasn't only me. As soon as I knew that I will have to play, I directly told Pumba and Myson that you guys will need to chip in more, because I will simply not have enough mental strength to go through all of this myself.
Yeah, just because of fatigue and so on.
Because I was planning on doing only pairings and adjusting my, essentially seeing what other teams are doing. That was my plan as a non-playing captain, that I would just go through what they are doing. and go through their historical scores, and then try to, for example, after day one, finding out whether those games are actually going the way they supposed to are, how they are playing, and then adjusting our whole pairing process according to this. But I couldn't, because why I said about adjusting our pairing process, it's always a game of information.
Right.
And the more you know, the better prepared you will be. And in this case, that's something that I'm unhappy that Crazy got sick, not in the sense that I'm angry at him or anything. It's something that I had a lot of planned how to spend time when players will be actually playing and make those 3-4 hours worthwhile. Like round one, if I knew remaining 2 teams from our pod are playing against each other, get their pairings, and then have our pairings prepared for next round before we even get there. So we do not need to change anything, to change any estimations, etc. So I could make sure that our players need even less work to do between rounds, but because of this, we couldn't. And I don't think we were tricked in any pairing. Like I think we identified what would happen in every of those pairings, but for example, I remember Aussies being so adamant that they out-tricked us in pairings, but at the same time,
that's what I wanted.
Well, at the same time, you chose your craftworks to play against Harleys when you knew that we already had 2 times nearly 20. So, I mean, fair, you won fair and square, but at the same time, I do not think it was only because of that. I think it was other factors as well.
Yeah, I think I listened to the I think the normal blokes where Eric said that they baited you into I think they wanted to bait you into something like Tau versus Tau. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which we knew we were favorable into, but our playtest into Sisters usually ended up in 14 points or more onto the table that was chosen by Tau. So, and we decided that, okay, we'll get those points here. And we had some wrong estimations later on that said that Pumba could play into those Tau better than he could. So maybe if we, so I wouldn't say it was a way of them outpairing us. It was just basically at this point we had a little bit of a wrong assessment for later on, that we were fair with dropping their sisters from the pairing and having Tau still to be a thing later on.
Right. Okay. And so that was the Aussies. I think we can close that chapter. How about the other teams? Were you satisfied with the pairs that you got? Were there any surprises, or do you think that you had it all figured out and it went exactly how you wanted?
I think nearly every single pairing went as we expected. Like I was telling guys, let's do this pairing now. We'll get attacked by those 2 armies, and we do this, and then we have something left for later that our tables will look better. So we had most of this planned out. Like we, for example, knew we will have rough time with our knight armies into USA, because their composition clearly wanted to prey on knights. And I told, okay, let's just sacrifice our knight players into something we do not want to play as the rest of our team. And that was actually the thing, because one of our Lesh played against Tau, which for me was an inferior Tau build, which I already had a conversation with Jack about it. And Duda played against Richard, which we also kind of didn't want to play because we weren't sure how he would play it.
Yeah, how the army works in his hands. Yeah.
Yeah, and and as I played some tests as knights into those into Admech, I kind of had an idea how it would work. So, for example, I knew we got 2 sacrifices there, but at the same time, we had our Necrons playing into their sisters, our Tau playing into their Necrons, and then our Harleys playing into their Craftworks. So some sacrifices made, but also some small wins in the pairing process. So, but as I say, it's never like whether we outplay them or anything. I do not think that at this point it's really an outplay or you being a tactical mastermind or whatever. It all comes down to what information you are fed. And if you have wrong information, you will make wrong choices. And there's nothing more to that than just having better info next year.
Yeah. But there is info that you collect before the event throughout the year, basically. And then there is info that you sort of collect at the event, which I think you wanted that to be your responsibility, but it didn't pan out. Fortunately, you had someone else who could observe the trends.
But even though we had Danny and Misha going through that, we had people on our Discord gathering those information and actually messaging me. Like, yes, we had those information. We had no one to process it. Like, only person who could process it would be Vladi, if he sat there and knew all the information we had at the venue. Like, there was simply no one. Like, even Vladi doing that would be quite far-fetched because he wasn't there. He didn't have all the information that we learned throughout the day, and we needed to apply to later pairings. So that's something that, as I said, was the most painful for me because I wanted to have this information superiority right now, like having more data, but we just couldn't, and I had to do my best playing and being a captain.
So you spoke about the game against Americans, so let's stick to that for a moment. Again, I remember when we were recording the pre-WTC episode that you were kind of surprised by their army composition, but then at the same time you weren't, because you sort of knew what setbacks their team experienced. But still, coming back, or taking that conversation into account, and then what you've seen at the event, do you think that their army composition was good? I mean, bringing Custodes, Brandon Grant with sisters. Again, I might be not informed well enough, but I don't know if Brandon has been extremely successful with those sisters throughout the year. And I'm not even entirely sure how he performed at the event. Do you think that those were the right choices to make, or not really?
It's easy to say whether something was right or wrong. I cannot talk in ultimates because I do not know all the things that were happening within the team, like where someone was willing to play an army. That's something that we needed to watch out for when choosing our composition as well. Like,
right.
Is an army something that player can play? Is this playstyle fitting for that player? Like, we have players like Myson or say Skark that would never play army that I was playing because they do not want an army that just grinds points. They want
not their style.
They have the mentality of just
the AD carries.
They are exactly. I'm the support. They are AD carries, and I could play any role because I played so long. But we have players that cannot play most of the roles. Like Gito was uncomfortable knowing that he will be the high scorer because he wasn't used to it.
Yeah, I remember his preparation.
So coming back to the USA topic, there were a few things that surprised me, like who was playing what. But I don't know how they choose the team. I know it was kind of like Sean choosing most of the team because he had the most experience. They had a lot of new faces, so there might be choices that aren't obvious, and maybe some things went wrong in their preparation. Like I can imagine that a preparation for a team that's mainly playing win draw lose system, and you kind of live off of it, makes it harder to prepare for a completely new system because you need to switch your mindset fully, which you sometimes cannot do. So,
okay, yeah, that's fair. All right, then a question that is also in a way connected to the way Aussies prepared their lists. Did Poland go for lists that were sort of out of the box lists, something that our opponents would have problems pairing into, or wouldn't exactly understand how the lists work? Or was it more down to math and cold calculation? Because again, Pumba said that his list is purely mathematical. It's just a calculation.
Yeah, but
So,
his list choice was completely different than other armies, because it was a choice that I made as one of those last armies that after doing more pairings, I realized that I need an army that's stable, agnostic, and that can counter Harleys and Sisters.
right.
So simple, just like that. I don't think we kind of look into things like we want something completely new that people will be surprised and don't know how to play it, because I do not like that as an assumption.
Mm-hmm.
I want to imagine that everyone is as well prepared as we are, and to not choose a way that is basically looking down on other teams. I prefer when we assume everyone knows what we know,
Mm-hmm.
and that everything is harder for us, because other ways might backfire on you.
Right.
This way, you are prepared for the worst, I think. And what we've done was purely choosing how we counter specific armies. And maybe some of our lists were maybe different than what you see in the world. Like, for example, Duda's Knights were, I think, only ones that use summoning.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong. But those weren't conscious choices that we want something out there. It was a choice that we think this is good into specific matchups. That's why we bring it. It's not like like Ozzy said, that they want to swap out 500 points. No, we had a specific role for every army in our team. Some of them actually played as expected. Some of them didn't. And that's it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so a question. I have a question about two of the army choices that you've made. So when I heard that Pumba would be playing Tyranids, I mean, I understood that there must be something behind it, and that's probably better for the team composition and so on. But I thought since Blood Angels sort of exploded after Nephilim or around Nephilim, and Pumba having a background of playing Space Marines, that maybe that army would have been better for him. In hindsight, were the Tyranids the correct choice? Or
Obviously.
Right, okay.
No doubt. Because we could leave them for later pairings, and they would do what they needed to do, so they could play armies even on the worst table possible, which Blood Angels would just crumble, because they needed some more work when it came to pairings. So it was a conscious choice. Obviously, Pumba had one great thing coming for him, because of this army choice, he could complain a shit ton. So at least we granted him that. But no, I wouldn't change it. I think Pumba said the same thing. Like, this army worked as intended.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said.
So no, I don't think we, in the hindsight, I think our team composition and prep was there. Everything worked as intended. What failed was individual games in last round.
Okay. And you pretty much answered that question, but still, again, I remember when I heard, I don't know if it was you or Adam Camilleri, who basically pointed out that there are like 28 sisters listed at the event. And the sisters, similarly to Blood Angels, they exploded, and everyone took them. But was it a good choice? And a good choice overall? Like, did you analyze after the event how many games have sisters won, or how many games have Blood Angel won, or you don't do that kind of analysis?
No, first of all, after the event, I was heartbroken and I was in a very bad spot. So I didn't want to think about the army choices that deeply. I will not lie. I had recurring nightmares about pairing against Aussies. I'm not even shitting you. Like, I would wake up in the middle of the night and scream Tyranids as a defender, and my girlfriend would actually tell me that it's fucking okay, bro.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Slap you in the face and shut the fuck up.
Yes,
It's over. It's over.
Well, for me, it's not over. Like, I will relive this one game again and again, and I don't know, I will go to a psychiatrist or something at one point. But thank you, Australia. Not only I had to suck your toe, now I have nightmares. But yeah, I think Sisters kind of done what we expected of them. I do not think they were such a high tier army. What we were saying, I think, from the very start,
Yep.
there was like the initial Art of War tier list that Sisters are like S tier, and from the very beginning we thought like, nah, that's not correct.
I remember.
Oh damn, sunlight. I cannot have sunlight in my life. Yeah, so I think Sisters performed kind of as I expected. They had just a lot of bad pairings, and this was an army that was a kind of another sacrificial list in my mind for our team, because I knew they will not score very high unless they get like Blood Angels or any army that they can prey upon. So there were a choice of a cog block for us whenever we had a matchup that we kind of didn't want. So their idea was that if anyone defended with Tau, they would just get Myson's Harleys and Sisters as an attackers. And if somebody ever chose Myson's Harleys, good luck to you guys. Like, you're in for a rough time. But Sisters were meant to get like 7-8 points from that matchup. So yeah, there's that.
Okay. So the other thing that I wanted to find out about was, and I think I wrote that in my message to you after the event, where I wrote that you did an outstanding job as a captain. But I wanted to.
I had to remind myself that we had that conversation. I was so drunk back then. I literally learned that while looking at the Discord the following day. So yeah.
But I did, and I still think that. But I wanted to get some insight into this because there is a lot happening, in my imagination and based off the scarce footage that we have from like the French stream and so on. How did you, or how because you guys knew each other very well, you knew the guys very well, but I guess nothing could have prepared the team and nothing could have prepared you for the, let's call it, the psychological struggle of an event like that, of drawing against Belgium in the first round, and then just the pressure of playing high stakes. So what did you do as a captain to keep the morale high, to make people not stress out, especially the new ones on the team?
So that's a thing that I didn't do. I've done some things like telling them to not look into social media, to not, for example, I played on a stream against France because I knew that I wouldn't care about it. So those are the small things. But it was mainly just, I think, as in every competition, if you're a captain, if you are confident, it translates to the whole team. Like, even if I wasn't, I only told this to like Danny, who was our coach, or maybe my son, so they would know it, but not like the rest, because it could only undermine their mental strength. So there wasn't like that much, only like get off the social media, and
which in itself is a huge thing, by the way. I admire that a lot. Like, I know that in the previous events, people would post videos of pairings or whatever, and here it was like total blackout, total silence.
Yeah, but we would have that as well. If I was a non-playing captain, we would have that. So it's not like a complete blackout.
Okay.
I would just monitor it. That would be the difference. Like, I could tell when to stop, who shouldn't, etc. But we simply didn't have enough people for this year. Like, hats off to Danny and Misha. It's just, you need one more. I think non-playing captain is crucial for the team.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I wouldn't say there was that much done. Like after Belgium, I remember it wasn't only me. Like few guys in the team just said, yeah, that was a speed bump. They prepared only for us this whole time. We had one estimation that was wrong, and that if it wasn't wrong, we would have surely won this matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Let's fix that estimation and just continue. And then we basically had a conversation that we need to everything from every game from now on. Nothing else matters. Just fucking do it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
And at any stage, did you like closely monitor, I don't know, guys like Gito or Pumba or Mice? I don't know if they even needed monitoring, but at the end of the day, it was their first event. So was there stress? Was there any kind of apprehension, maybe, or you didn't have to look over them because
Yeah, there
yeah,
were
they didn't need
some
it.
cases. I do not want to name people.
Obviously, don't go into like great detail, but in general.
Yeah, I wish there were situations when I would approach a player and just have a talk with them after the game. But as I was playing, I couldn't. And I know that it might have helped if I were there to just talk, have a beer, and just talk through, because it's just a game, and sometimes you lose, and sometimes you feel like heartbroken because you failed the team. But at the same time, it's not you losing; it's the team losing.
Mm-hmm.
But you still feel like it's your own mistake. Like the same thing with against Aussies. Like I'm reliving all those pairings, because even though I know we've done everything according to the tables, now I'm reliving those pairings because I want to see where we could have done better. And it's also very toxic in some sense for your own good. But I don't think we really had that much of it. We had few very experienced players, and like one thing that also helped us was that guys knew each other for so long that basically from the very beginning we knew when we created this team that we will not go against each other, will not blame anyone. It's a team. If we lose, we lose. If we win, we win. And I think that translated. So there wasn't that much coming from my end, I would say, overall.
Okay. Well, the fact that that you're having all those nightmares and you're reliving those memories and so on, it only shows your dedication and devotion to the game and to the team, which is again something that is a trait of a captain and something that you just need to have. So yeah, I think that's brilliant, and that's even though you're suffering, it's brilliant.
I had a conversation with Vladi about it, whether because this was like third time that we needed a draw in the last round to win the event, and third time we fucking lost. And I had a conversation with Vladi as he was a captain last two times, like how he dealt with it, and it was comforting to me that he couldn't deal with it either. Like that I'm not alone on this. So
okay,
that was nice.
Yeah, I guess you can find comfort in this. So
Yeah.
probably another thing, but that's a wild guess. Another thing that can help you deal with it somehow is, planning for doing the lessons learned and planning for the future. Are there any lessons learned from this event? Any, I don't know, what was the word? Conclusions drawn from the event that you think should be taken into account?
Yeah, that we are fucked as a country. That we get second place, and then everyone relieves that we are losers. That nearly everyone at that venue would take second place and be really happy about it and be proud of themselves. And we fought like we are the worst. That's something that I think it's even a mental part of our country. Or
yeah, that's the Polish mentality. Simply, that's what happened.
So yeah, that's. But I have few takeaways. Like, we need more prep.
Even more.
the biggest one. Like for next years, the team needs even more work put in so we can get that first place. And it's scary at the same time, which was one of the things why I was having nightmares, etc. Because I couldn't imagine myself going through putting even more time into it. And I think that might be common thing for other guys, but at the same time, I'm more pessimistic about it. Duda might be more pessimistic about it. Skarg or Leshu are, but we are longtime veterans. Leshu and Duda never won, so we have different approach that those new faces that losing this last round only fueled them more to get better for next time, which I think in some sense is a good thing, because I feel like even if me or Vladi for some reason decide to stop playing in this community or attending WTC, after this year, I know we have fresh players, fresh blood that can take over and do well, and I feel very confident that it's not dependent on us anymore.
Okay. Do you think that the Polish community should invest more time into proper team events, like 5-man, 8-man, instead of like we have, I don't know how many, 13 or 15 masters throughout the year? Should some of them be replaced with just proper team events, or is it too difficult to organize?
Well, I think it depends on the community. Myself, I will play only team events. I do not care about singles at all. So I will not attend probably any single events as a player anyway, because I don't like them. But at the same time, I do think single events are also needed, because it's easier for a new player to actually get into the community thanks to singles, which is way harder when you're doing it via teams, because you already need to have some group of friends. And if you're a new player who's just up and coming from like a smaller city, you would know no one, so you wouldn't attend those. So I do not think that team events are the way to go. They cannot be a sole thing. I should like 50-50 splits sounds good to me, because we could still have plenty of team events, but we need those singles so people can show up and actually realize that this is a great hobby and great thing to do in your spare time.
Absolutely. And so that they have like access to the national team, in person, they can play at the table and experience them and talk to them and so on. That's of really high value. So listen, I would like to finish the episode on a positive note, something very unlikely for Polish people, but let's try and end it with a positive. So if I could ask you for a summary of the things that you think the team and yourself have done right. So I asked you about the lessons learned. So lessons learned are about the things that probably didn't go too well. And now I want you to focus on the things that you're proud of, that you're happy of.
I mean,
what were those?
I'm proud of every single guy, because I can see how much they put their work in. Like, I cannot put this into words, but I'm really happy they put so much heart into it. Is there like something very specific? I can say what we've done right. I think it's easier for me to say what we've done right. I think our approach to choosing armies was the correct one, and I would not change anything about it in the coming years. So, and the fact that when I was in the US and I would tell people that I found the problem in the pairings, and I would tell them that I need a solution for this one. Can, for example, one of you play this and this matchup? And in the next 8 hours, I would get information how this matchup goes because somebody played. That's insane. Like I cannot imagine national team without TTS nowadays. It just won't work, because there is no way to share information and get data as easily as on TTS. And I think that's a common feeling amongst other teams when I've talked to them, like Canada, Netherlands, those more up and coming teams, they share that sentiment. So I think that's one of the things that we've done very much right. And also what I think we've done right is a small thing, but you need to have the whole team sleeping at one place. So
Okay.
you get a lot more chit chat, you get better banter, you can prep for next days, but you also feel more as a team when you're sleeping at one spot. So it was something that I think needs to happen in all the coming years. But like coming to the players themselves, like there are situations where I know some players could have played more tests, for example, to not get surprised by specific pairings. But at the same time, can you even require more when you realize that those players who still have work, family, and they already sacrificed all of it, decided to play one less game? Not really. So I'm really proud of all the work. What I'm just learning is that you need more.
Yeah.
I might be a very pessimistic person in that sense. So I might
again that's a Polish trait. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, you can't really prepare for every eventuality. So as you said, but I wouldn't be asking that question if I didn't have a list of my own that I think deserves a shout out. And the first thing would be, and again, I may be wrong about this, but I like to think it is like that. If you think about it, the first two teams at the WTC play the WTC system regularly. It's the Aussies, they have their team events, some other events, but they do follow the WTC system, the 20-0 system. They are very used to it. So are we, which means that you are probably doing this right. Second, as you said, the reps and the humongous amount of time and the effort and sacrifice that comes with it. It's just, you say you haven't done enough. I say what I said, you cannot be prepared for every eventuality. So again, kudos to the team, because I dare say you were the most, or the team with the most reps out there at the event.
Because you also knew what was happening throughout the whole time before the event. Like you spoken to us all the time.
Absolutely. So I dare say, I might be mistaken, but I dare say that you were the most prepared team out there. So the dedication that comes with it as well. And then the last thing, and it cannot be overstated how important that is, the community building that happened because of the event, because of the national team, and because of TTS and Discord.
I think that's the best thing for me. Like, as I played at many ETCs/WTCs, and I never felt such support.
Yeah, like, the Discord was crazy on the day when you played the final. It was, I haven't seen that ever before.
Same. Like, going through it in the evening, drinking beers brought tears into my eyes, right?
I can imagine.
Yeah, so it was a great feeling.
Right. So, yeah, final thought, I guess. It needs to be stressed that the second place is a fucking amazing result. And really, if anyone takes away from this, he's a dick. So don't let anyone tell you that he didn't perform well. And I guess
no one does. It's just myself. So
no, I mean, there is always this thought, oh, they were going for the first place, it could have been better. I mean, the best one, and we need to be clear about that. But then the second place is amazing as well. And I mean, there were good teams that didn't get that high. So it's absolutely stunning.
I mean, the most important thing for us obviously was beating the team of celebrities.
Clearly, and yeah, you did that.
We actually had the biggest morale drop before that game. All the estimations went down by at least one color. So it was rough.
And then you did.
Yeah. So it was all fine, but I think the experience from this year will be very helpful for the guys as well. So we'll see how this will translate, but you need to be there to actually understand, because for me, this event every year was always a highlight of my year. It's just like a family meeting of people you only meet once a year for 10 years. Nowadays, I get to meet them more when I travel to UK, but still, it's like a huge family meeting. And with how the approach to gentlemen play changed, we had only great games, like nothing bad to say about any game. It was all great. And it was fun. So I definitely say that if you are listening from like another country and you can at least try to get into your team, you should try, even if not as a player, maybe as a coach or anything, because I would gladly have another coach if someone is willing to go, right? It's a lot of work, but you also will actually get that communal feeling that you get at this event that you cannot feel anywhere else. Like that, when we arrived at the venue on Thursday, I had so many bear hugs with people after all those years, and I spent like 2 hours at that venue, and I wasn't sure if I would be able to walk straight back to our hotel. So because there were so many welcome drinks that I wasn't sure I will be good in next 2 hours. So yeah.
Yep. So it does sound like true Olympic Games of 40K. So yeah, I'm really happy that we had a national team over there and that it performed so well. Any final thoughts? Because I think it's time to wrap up. What's the plan for the future? For the next year?
To show that we do not fuck with spiders.
Right.
But yeah, I think like the main plan for next year is to obviously show that second place was just a fluke and that we are the team to beat. When I heard that certain teams didn't prepare for us, I was kind of baffled. Like, come on, guys, that's insulting.
Yeah.
So
how can you do that?
So yeah, I think the plan for next year is to choose a team and actually, hopefully, have more players trained up to the national team level in the future years by using TTS and making sure that our community is stronger. At least for me, that's like a greater goal, that we can train new people and they will train their new people and actually have that stigma of national team being a bunch of assholes kind of disappear. I think it already disappeared in the last 2 years, but I want to fortify it. So,
yeah, and that sounds like a great idea. I also hear that I'm going to have some competition in the future. So Team Poland is creating a podcast. Do you know anything about that?
Actually, not that much. so
I thought I would squeeze something out of you.
No. I actually do not. I know I have some papers to sign at my place right now, but yeah, we're planning on doing like another way of basically financing the team for next year. So like creating a Patreon and doing some videos where we show our approach to the game. But I know Arek is putting a lot of work into that, and he already took the brunt of work on it. But yeah, I think that's what we're trying to do, because for us, actually, the trip is quite expensive. Like, it was when I counted my expenses, it was like 3,000 zloty for 4 days.
Right.
So it's quite expensive when you.
It's a good holiday if you think about it.
Yeah, it essentially is 1 week in like Croatia or Egypt or anything. So not to say that our sponsors aren't doing a lot, like they helped us. Thanks Hegemon for everything. But if we could make sure that, for example, next year, I wouldn't have to have conversation with players whether you will be financially able to go to the event, and do you need a 0% loan from me to actually go to the event? Like, I hope we won't have those conversations again.
Yeah, you have an entire year, so we'll see where you'll be at the same time next year or before the WTC next year. Let's, here's hopes to it happening. Here's hopes that no bullshit COVID pops up or anything like that, and especially last minute. So yeah, any final thoughts, final words, or are we wrapping this up?
I'm glad you're coming to LGT.
Oh yeah, that's going to happen. I spoke with Zach, myself, Joker, and Vitalis. We're coming to actually do the coverage of that, so probably we'll meet over there fairly soon. And by the way, I'll use the opportunity not to talk about contact loss, but to talk about something else that I also find pretty important, pretty neat, actually awesome that the national team is doing. So I'll use the time we have before we finish. To anyone listening, please find Team Poland 40K on Facebook, because Team Poland 40K, they are doing something amazing right now. They have gathered some of the T-shirts of some stars at the event. So people from Art of War, people from Art of War Down Under, people from Team of Australia, and they are actually auctioning those right now to provide some financial support to our brothers in Ukraine. So if you want to do something neat, if you want to help, if you want to contribute, any amount is good. But remember, it's still
there will be more auctions coming. I assume
exactly.
We try to help where we can.
Yeah, so there are different auctions. This time it's the T-shirts, but sometimes it's like dice of a particular team or something else. So make sure that you like and follow them on Facebook, and you like and follow those auctions, because again, any support that you can send towards Ukraine is extremely important. So yeah, I just wanted to plug that, and I think that this is where we can finish. So Typhus, thank you for the insights. As I said, we didn't speak about the games, but I think it was extremely informative anyway.
They were really boring.
So maybe we'll make another episode just about them. We'll see. But for now, I think this episode is full of great information already anyway. So thank you for that. Thanks. And to our listeners, if you like what you see and if you want us to continue, please like and subscribe, and also comment, because we want to increase our ranges and reach more people. And you can help us with that as well. So I strongly encourage that you do. And yeah, we'll wrap the episode. So thank you for your attention. Thank you, Typhus, for agreeing to do this. And until next time, bye, everyone.
Hello.